How many continents are there? 7, right? That's what your first grade teacher swore on the globe. But what if there were 6 or 8? Yeah, 8. Meet Oceania. You've heard the name, but is it just a region on your VPN list, or a real continent hiding in plain sight? Let's find out. Okay, so let's start first with what is Oceania. The straightforward answer is a massive sprawl of islands scattered across the Pacific. It's nearly a third of the planet, from Asia to the Americas. If Earth had a middle of nowhere, this would be it. However, Oceania covers Australia, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, and more than 10,000 islands. You almost never see it in textbooks. When people say Oceania, they usually mean the islands, not Australia. And honestly, it's easy to see why. First, Oceania's land area is only 3.5 million square miles, and 85% of it is in one place. Second, it has around 45 million people, 62% of them all in the same place. That's right, I'm talking about Australia. You know, the continent, the one we've known about since kindergarten. 7 continents, end of story. Except, not really. No one ever explains why there are only 7 continents. Most teachers probably aren't sure. The maps are supposed to answer that question, and this channel. You're welcome. So where does the idea of a continent even come from? To find out, we've got to head back to the Bronze Age. When the Greeks went off to Troy, crossing the Dardanelles meant crossing from Europe to Asia, even though that strait is just 4 miles wide. The Bosporus, less than half a mile. Not exactly a world apart. The Greeks and Romans drew lines around the Mediterranean. Modern science drew them around tectonic plates. Guess who got Oceania quite right? No one. The planet's crust is 16 giant plates sliding around, bumping into each other. The whole thing's just pretending to be stable, kinda like my career. So now, there's a more scientific way to define a continent. It's not about culture or history anymore, it's geology. A continent's edge comes down to its continental shelf. As National Geographic puts it, a continental shelf is a gently sloping area that extends outward from the beach far into the ocean. It's part of the ocean, but also part of the continent. Earth does not care about our maps. It just builds shelves and lets us argue over them. The geological version of a couple after an IKEA trip. Take a look at a tectonic map. The big plates mostly line up with the continents, the same ones we learned in first grade. But there's one problem. There's no European plate, no Asian plate either, just one, the Eurasian plate. So why are Europe and Asia still treated like separate continents, neatly divided by the Aegean Sea and the Urals? Well, habit, mostly. A few historical quirks, and some pride. Not everyone buys it though. That's why some geographers still insist there are only 6 continents. And sometimes those 6 continents still count Europe and Asia separately. Others just toss Australia in with Asia. And my head is starting to hurt with that. But continents aren't just about geography. They never were. Europe and Asia sit on the same tectonic plate, but we still split them at the Aegean and the Urals, mostly for cultural reasons. And to be fair, those cultures are distinct. They've had thousands of years to drift apart. The Eurasian landmass is massive. There's plenty of space for a few millennia of "I'm not like you" to take hold. So where exactly does Oceania fit in with all of this? Europeans built the version of the world we still use. By the late 1700s, James Cook was out there charting the edges, the scattered islands of Oceania, places Europe hadn't even imagined. His voyages changed everything, and ended poorly. Let's just say Hawaii didn't roll out the red carpet. But Cook's maps exposed a problem. For centuries, Western science has tried to box the planet into neat little continents. Clean lines, tidy colors, something that fits nicely on a classroom globe. But the Pacific didn't get the memo. It's chaos out there. Thousands of islands scattered across an ocean bigger than all the continents combined, each with its own language, culture, and history. A cartographer's nightmare. So can these islands really count as a continent? Depends on who you ask. Even the UN can't decide what Oceania really is. In the official geoscheme, it exists mostly as a statistical catch-all, a polite way of saying other. Australia doesn't even get its own box. The UN just folds it into Oceania, stamps the label, and calls it a day. Who says bureaucracy doesn't work? Making these classifications sounds about as fun as binge-watching the last season of Game of Thrones, but the geoscheme actually matters. It's the bedrock for a lot of the data policymakers rely on, the stuff that decides budgets, aid, and who gets what slice of the pie. It also shapes international trade and investment. Investors, markets, entire economies, they all use information built on this framework. So yeah, it's boring, but it's important. But the geoscheme isn't the final word on Oceania, not even close. There's a bit of a compromise going on, bureaucratic peacekeeping at its finest. Oceania is considered a continent, but Australia is its continental landmass, which sounds a little weird after everything you just heard, like saying the cake is part of the frosting. So what does that make the islands? A distinct region? A tiny continent? Or too small to count? Maybe they're not a continent at all, just a geopolitical label, a cultural catch-all, or, let's be honest, something that only exists so VPN companies can brag about having one more flag on the list. If Europe and Asia get to stay separate, even in the UN's everything but the kitchen sink geoscheme, why not Oceania? To start untangling this mess, we've got to look at Australia. With 85% of the land and 62% of the people, it's either the anchor of Oceania or the kid who outgrew the family photo. And it's got receipts, its own tectonic plate, all to itself. Australians usually call their continent Australia. Fair enough, it's earned the title. The world's 20th largest economy, pulling a GDP of around $1.8 trillion. Not bad for 28 million people. GDP per capita tops $72,000, ranking 13th globally, ahead of the UK and nipping at Germany's heels. By some measures, it's even higher. In 2021, Australia ranked second in wealth per adult, right behind Luxembourg, which, let's be honest, is basically a bank vault with a flag. The economy runs on dirt and fire. Coal, natural gas, iron ore, gold, agriculture, all of it shipped out by the boatload. It's a global commodities machine. BHP Group is the world's biggest mining company. Tamboran Resources and Wesfarmers keep energy and retail running. Wesfarmers even owns Kmart and Target down under. Australia's wealth isn't just buried underground. Some of it's on aisle 7. Australia's economy goes way beyond mining. Unlike most resource-heavy nations, it dodged the resource curse. Instead, it built a financial and biotech powerhouse instead, a country that started with pickaxes and ended up with patents. It's also the region's global face, the celebrity neighbor everyone's heard of. Before the pandemic, nearly 9.5 million tourists showed up every year. Beaches, reefs, kangaroos, the whole postcard. Meanwhile, most of its neighbors barely made it onto the brochure. New Zealand's on page 13, giving the evil eye. Australia's a great place to live, assuming you can survive it. Everything wants to bite, sting, or eat you. And I haven't even gotten to the part where Oz really starts throwing its weight around. Some of the island nations in Oceania, they don't even bother with their own money. Too much hassle. They just use the Australian dollar instead. Kiribati, Nauru, Tuvalu all decided it's easier to let the neighbor handle the wallet. Like borrowing sugar, but for an economy. Australia makes up even more of the economy of Oceania than it does the land or population. 85.8% of Oceania's GDP. So is Australia the anchor of Oceania? Yes. Does it overshadow the smaller nations like Fiji, Samoa, and Kiribati? Absolutely. What Australia wants usually defines Oceania, as long as it's a part of the group, period. But the equation tilts even harder for the smaller islands. I haven't even brought in the other big boys yet. New Zealand is about 1,000 miles perched a little awkwardly between the Australian and Pacific plates. Not the most relaxing spot. Continental Drift has plans. Just very long-term ones. For now, though, it's another nice corner of Oceania. About 5.3 million people call it home. That's only 121st in the world, but by Oceania's standards, that's practically a metropolis. New Zealand's economy is smaller than Australia's, but still thriving. It doesn't throw the same global weight, but life there's good. Really good. The country built its wealth on cows and trees, but it's come a long way since. What used to be all pastures and sawmills now includes advanced manufacturing, tech, and services. In news that won't surprise a single person, New Zealand claims nearly everything in Oceania that Australia doesn't. 12% of the region's GDP, all theirs. The rest? Think spare change scattered across a swimming pool. Let's head back to the Australian plate. If you thought the map made sense up to now, you're about to be disappointed. This is New Guinea, split clean down the middle. To the west, Indonesia, once a Dutch colony. The east, yeah, that one's a bit more complicated. The northern half used to belong to Germany. The southern half? That was Britain's. Then Germany decided to fight everyone. The first time, anyway, World War I. Australia walked away with the East. Then World War II showed up, Japan invaded, lost, and history hit repeat. 4 more years of the same old. 1949 rolled around, and Indonesia won independence from the Dutch. Sort of. One stubborn patch refused to budge, Western New Guinea. The Netherlands held on. Why? Commitment issues? No. New Guinea wasn't like the rest of the old Dutch East Indies. Different people, different culture. Melanesian, not Malay. So the Dutch stuck around, saying they were preparing it for independence. Sure. That didn't sit well with Sukarno, Indonesia's first president. He decided all former Dutch territory now belonged to him. So, in 1962, he went to war over it. The US wasn't thrilled. Washington stepped in like a tired parent and told everyone to play nice. The result? The New York Agreement. The Dutch would hand West New Guinea to a UN administration for 6 years. Then, the locals would vote. Independence or integration with Indonesia? Simple. Well, on paper, anyway. Indonesia's military handpicked about 1,000 people to vote. If vote meant do what we tell you. Every single one said yes to joining Indonesia. 100% approval. The kind of number you only see in dictatorships and dandruff shampoo ads. It's still disputed today, but like most old geopolitical grudges, it's been swept under the rug. Except now, the rug's so lumpy it's tripping anyone who walks over it. This little territorial quirk means half of New Guinea counts as part of Indonesia, and therefore Asia. The other half, Papua New Guinea, is Oceania. It's the continental equivalent of sharing a Netflix account and pretending it's 2 separate households. Papua New Guinea has over 11 million people. That's more than New Zealand, but its economy? Tiny by comparison. The country runs mostly on what it can dig up or chop down. Mining, drilling, logging. If it comes out of the ground, it's GDP. Petroleum gas and gold lead the pack, with copper, nickel, palm oil, timber, and coffee tagging along for the ride. Despite all that natural wealth, most people see little of it. It's the classic story. Rich in resources, poor in returns. A sharp contrast to its wealthier Pacific neighbors who at least got to keep a few of the shiny things they pulled out of the ground. Papua New Guinea plays odd one out when it comes to global trends. The rest of the world is heading into cities, but PNG, like Williamsburg hipsters, it keeps things old school, pretending the modern world's just a passing fad. Only about 14% of its people lived in cities in 2023. Most of them are in Port Moresby, a capital of 700,000, a place where office blocks and unpaved streets sit awkwardly side by side. And despite being built on mining, PNG's most valuable company isn't in mining at all. It's in finance. Somehow the banks beat the gold rush. Mining, exploration, and industrial firms fill out the rest. Now for the big reveal. Oceania's economy, outside Australia and New Zealand, pretty much just Papua New Guinea. 1.6% of the region's GDP. The rest? Background noise. Australia's top of the class. The others are still waiting for recess. That's probably why it's easy to split Europe and Asia into separate continents. Does it make sense scientifically? Nope, but culturally, economically, sign me up. 2 civilizations, thousands of years of building, trading, and occasionally setting each other on fire. But more importantly, money talks. In 2024, Europe made up 24.47% of the world's GDP. Asia, 36.47%. When you're holding more than half the world's cash, you get to draw the map. Literally. Oceania, though? just 1.82% of global GDP, even with Australia doing the heavy lifting. When you're that far out of sight, you're also out of mind. Bad news for the country's sinking, economically and in some cases literally. Tuvalu is best known for its internet domain, .tv. It doesn't stand for television, just a cosmic coincidence that turned into a business model. The country earns a steady income from selling .tv domains. Can't blame them for all the annoying streamers that come with it though. It's one of its main revenue streams, right up there with a national trust fund and fishing. Almost half the population works in the fishing industry, pulling from waters teeming with nearly 200 species. The rest? Mostly coconuts and creativity. Because beyond that, Tuvalu doesn't have much in the way of natural resources, which is why it makes up just 0.003% of Oceania's total economy. Just above is Nauru at 0.008%, although above might be generous. Its path to profit isn't a success story. It's a warning label. Nauru was once called Pleasant Island, and it lived up to the name. A tiny speck in the Pacific sitting on a mountain of phosphate, which, to be clear, is just really old bird poop. But there was gold in that bird poop. Nauru became one of the richest nations on Earth. GDP per capita in the 60s, around $50,000, second only to Saudi Arabia. Not bad for a place you could walk across in an afternoon. Then, the poop hit the fan. It ran out. The money followed. By the 1990s, Nauru went from millionaire to broke faster than you can say non-renewable resource. Today, GDP per capita hovers around $11,000. The economic hangover after a decades-long Vegas binge. Desperate for cash, Nauru got creative. Got a spare $100 grand? Congrats, you're now Norwegian? A citizen. You're a citizen. Before that, it moonlighted as a tax haven and money laundering hotspot. Nice work, if you can get it. For a while it worked, then the US noticed. Sanctions hit. Game over. But Nauru has a problem. The phosphate's gone, the money's gone, but the ocean isn't. Since 1992, sea levels have climbed about 4 inches, and the rise is speeding up. Roughly 0.15 inches a year now, double what it was in the 1990s. The nerdonauts at NASA say US coastlines could see another 10 to 12 inches by 2050. By 2100, between 11 and 21 inches. For most countries, that's a statistic. For Nauru, it's a deadline. The island sits barely above sea level, and the tide doesn't care about independence, or GDP, or history. Not everyone will face rising seas equally. The rich nations will build walls. The rest will need to learn to swim. Wealthy nations like the US can throw billions at seawalls, pumps, and climate resilience. The islands of Oceania? They get press conferences and sympathy tweets. Nauru's already selling citizenship, funding the lifeboats before the ship sinks. Tuvalu doesn't even have that luxury. The entire country rises about 10 feet above sea level. Locals tell stories of the ocean swallowing trees that once stood inland. Not waves, the ocean itself, moving in like it owns the place. Only about 10,000 people live there. Most packed around the capital, Funafuti. Half of it could soon be gone. The .tv domain might bring in money, sure, but you can't stream your way out of the ocean. Building something like Venice's $7.5 billion MOSE flood defense? Impossible. Tuvalu's entire economy in 2023 was $63 million. That's the cost of a mid-budget Netflix movie about climate change. And here's where it matters. The reason this whole is Oceania a continent debate actually matters. Because if you're not called Australia, New Zealand, or Papua New Guinea, good luck getting anyone to look your way. But Tuvalu's got an ace in the hole. And no, it's not a Twitch-a-thon. It's King Charles III, the guy whose face is on currency, stamps, and the occasional royal scandal headline. Tuvalu still recognizes him as monarch, and that's like having a friend with benefits. So, Tuvalu cut a deal. Not a financial bailout, a literal one. Thanks to a new agreement, 280 Tuvaluans a year can permanently settle in Australia, a climate lifeboat with a visa attached. And it's popular. Over 8,700 people have already signed up, more than 80% of the entire population. If the seas keep rising, Tuvalu could become the first country in history to move continents. A nation without borders. Without land, still Oceania, just shifted over a bit. It sounds sad, sure, but most countries in Oceania don't even have that luxury. When the outside world does pay attention, it's usually with a camera and a travel brochure. To many, the region's not a home, it's a social media brag. And that kind of invisibility matters. It made these islands easy to exploit, the perfect laboratory for someone else's experiments, even by countries that loved to talk about freedom and anti-colonialism. Looking at you, United States. Take the Marshall Islands. You'll find them halfway between Hawaii and Australia, a dot in the world's biggest ocean. It makes up just 0.01% of Oceania's GDP. No oil, no gold, no leverage, which meant they got something else instead. The kind that comes with a site of radiation. If you think calling Oceania a continent is just semantics, here's why it matters. See this atoll? It's the one that gave its name to a favorite piece of beachwear. But today, it's remembered for something a lot louder, a lot brighter, and infinitely more radioactive. In 1946, President Truman decided Bikini Atoll was the perfect place to drop a nuke. Remote, low population, easy to ignore. Ideal criteria for blowing things up. Between 1946 and 1958, the US conducted 23 nuclear tests. But that was just the opening act. Across the Marshall Islands, there were 67 tests in total. That's what happens when no one's watching the map. The tests left Bikini uninhabitable. The US declared it safe again in the late 1960s and 1970s. Guess what? It wasn't. People moved back and got ill. Birth defects. In 1978, scientists found strontium in the water, cesium-137 in people's bodies, plutonium in their waste. It was the world's most tragic chemistry experiment. Today, the atoll's like Oceania's own Chernobyl, if Chernobyl had better beaches. A ghost fleet still sits beneath the lagoon. Tourists still dive there. It's considered safe, as long as you don't stay long enough to glow. For the global powers, the nuclear tests were just numbers. Blast yields, shockwaves, data points in the Cold War's biggest science fair. But for the islanders, that was the end. Homes gone, food poisoned. Generations changed by fallout. Literally. In the 1980s, the Marshall Islands set up the Nuclear Claims Tribunal. It was supposed to deliver justice, or at least a receipt. It started with $59 million. Pocket change for the US. Later, the tribunal ruled the US owed $150 million in damages. Congress said the check's in the mail. The USPO must be really slow. Let's compare that to Australia. Massive, empty, a few kangaroos. 95% of the land is either sparsely inhabited or totally deserted. 85% of Australians live within 31 miles of the coast. So not a bad place to test nuclear weapons, right? Wide open spaces, plenty of sand, minimal witnesses. The British certainly thought so. Between 1952 and 1963, they ran 12 nuclear tests. Maralinga, the Montebello Islands, Emu Field. Pick your desert, pick your bomb. The indigenous Maralinga Tarucha people were forced off their ancestral lands. Why change the habit of a lifetime, Britain? But here's where the story changes. The Maralinga Tarucha got their land back in 2009. Why? Recognition. When you're a continent, you get cleanup crews, compensation, and press coverage. When you're an island, you get fallout. By 1957, half the country had had enough. The government panicked. Cleanup crews rolled in. Now, most of Maralinga is open again. Hunting, mining, whatever. Just don't build your dream home there. The Taranaki test site still glows like a nightlight. That's the perk of being a continent. You get press coverage and the occasional apology. That's why people in the Pacific want Oceania to be seen as more than Australia plus some islands. Visibility matters. It's the difference between an apology and an afterthought. between being on the map and being a spot in the ocean. So, what is Oceania? A continent? A culture? Or just the world's missing piece? Depends on who you ask. Depends who's looking. That's the problem and the beauty. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. It really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MapPack.